What if people we write off are the very ones God is pursuing most fiercely? By every human measure, my guest today was the epitome of a prodigal lost cause. And yet, his story stands as a powerful reminder that real transformation is possible. Today, Scott Mocha is here to share a glimpse of that journey and discuss how we can approach and share the gospel with those society often overlooks. If you ever wondered whether real transformation is still possible or how to love people others have already given up on, this conversation is for you. I'm Anna Murby, and this is Honest Christian Conversations. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much for checking out the show. And if you've listened before, thank you for coming back. After the episode, if Scott's story resonates with you, please consider leaving a review for the podcast wherever you listen or by using the review link in the show notes. Okay, let's get to it. Scott, thank you for coming on the show. You have a very interesting story, so why don't you share it with us?
You got it. Well, first, thanks for having me. Been listening to your podcast, really, really enjoying the
Appreciate
conversation that you're
that.
having, and I'm excited about where you're headed in this new year. It sounds like you're doing some really cool things, and I always want to celebrate when somebody's stepping out and getting outside of your comfort zone. It's just
hmm
such a cool
Thank
place to
you.
be. Yeah.
I
So
appreciate
happy
that.
for you, and I excited to see what's going to come of that because some cool stuff's coming.
Yeah.
Um, I'll give you the quick and dirty version of my story. It is crazy. I was a I grew up in a broken home, and we started in church when I was a little tiny kid, and
Mm,
I had a number of things that separated me from the church when I was young. And as I grew up, I really had no resemblance of faith. Maybe some, like, deep chords where I maybe believed there was a God, but I wasn't so sure about the divinity of Jesus, and there's just a lot of things that I was like, "I don't know about any of this."
mhm,
So, on my own route to "happiness," quote, unquote, I was a nightclub DJ. I was doing a lot of things in the music business. I was working, a lot in gay bars, ironically, which
mhm.
have the best music, and was having
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to a gay bar, but yeah, they do seem to know what a good beat is.
Yeah, best music, best and they're good people too, so, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed my time there.
You
But one of
may I ask if you were gay or if that's just like you said, they had good music and you were a DJ and that's just where you ended up?
No, it's a great question. I'm not gay, never have been, very much into females, and I'm married, have a wonderful wife, um,
I get it,
but
that's what I say too, it's like I'm very much into men. I'm married, but that's where I am, so I get it.
yeah, totally. No, you actually bring up an interesting point, and I'll make it a quick aside. The reason I went to this bar in the first place, I was going through a bad breakup, and my,
Mm,
2 of my dear girlfriends said, "We're gonna take you to this club, it's called The Edge," and it was in Kansas City, and I was like, that's a gay bar. I'm not going to a gay bar." The dumbest thing I've ever heard, and so I think it was like 5 or 6 invitations, that it took for me to finally go, and I was really reluctant. Uh,
mm,
and went into this place, and what I found was quite different than what I expected, and it was a
hmm,
place that was full of acceptance and love and really just amazing people, and it became a place where I started to heal from that breakup, eventually got a job there as a barback, and I attribute that time to being one of the most formative times in my life as a man, where
mm,
these gay men surrounded me and gave me acceptance and love and gave me the space to become who I needed to become without any expectations, predispositions, or anything. And and it's interesting, I didn't plan on talking about that, but even talking about it now, it kinda sets up the stage perfectly for these other conversations about faith, right?
mhm,
Because, that's the model for me that showed me what it means to love people first,
mhm.
because they loved me, I would say, unconditionally. They didn't expect a
Yeah.
darn thing from me, and they
Isn't
taught
that
me so much.
ironic?
Yeah,
Isn't
it
that
is, isn't it?
ironic? Yeah, I that is that is both beautiful and ironic. I love it. Continue.
Okay, great. Well, one of the shadow side of the nightclub industry is there's a lot of drugs and there's a lot
Mhm,
of excess and charading and all that stuff. And it's not I mean, it's not the entire nightclub industry, but if you work in the industry, you're around it.
Yeah.
And I picked up a nice little cocaine habit over a few
Mm,
years, and by the time I was 32 years old, I was way deep into it, and I was about to I mean, the way I describe that time is I was reaching for mediocrity. I had given up on trying to
mm,
become anything great and believed that I was really in a bad place.
hmm.
So I had an overdose at the age of 32 and, miraculously woke up. I mean, it's like, shouldn't have. I had bitten, my tongue off, and I'd cut myself up really bad with a knife,
Wow.
done a lot of really horrific things to myself, and I, like, in flashbacks, could remember what I had done, which is awful.
Yeah.
Um, and so I didn't know where to go, and my girlfriend at the time, she lived down the street from this church that she said was a cool church, and I love to do this, "Cool church?" I'm like, "What
Yeah.
is a cool church?" All churches are
A
lame as far
church
as I was
that's
concerned.
not gonna teach you the truth. That would be a cool church.
Usually, yeah. So I was as far from Christianity as you could imagine, so I
Mm,
decided that if we're gonna go into this place, I'm gonna make it blatantly clear that I am not one of them.
mm.
So I put on, like, my meanest clothing I could possibly like this biker jacket that was all beat up and had been run across the road a number of times and boots that hadn't been shined in years, and, I mean, I was trying to look mean.
Yeah.
And we walked into this church, and it was a church full of motorcycle enthusiasts, and they all had on leather jackets. Yeah.
Oh, this story so far has reminded me of the verse where it says God uses the foolish to confound the wise.
Mm.
And you may not have felt that you were wise at anything you were doing, but while I'm sitting here listening to it, I'm like, you felt like you were wise in what you were doing, that you were doing what is the right thing. And God's like, look at what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that I'm full of unconditional love through homosexual men. And I'm also going to show you that a quote unquote cool church that you thought you were going to go into and set it on fire is like, hey, you're just like us. We wear the same. I love it. I love it. Please continue. This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, you nailed it. That's exactly what was happening, and I remember sitting there and listening to the music start, and I'd not really been to a church service since I was a little child, so this was
Mm.
very different than what I had experienced,
Mhm.
and they sang this song, and of course, we know the song now. It was I Can Only Imagine. You probably know the
Mhm.
song years
Yep.
ago.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there, actually, literally, we found a row that had only 2 chairs, so nobody could sit next to us because I didn't wanna have to talk to anybody or anything,
Yeah, I get
and
that sentiment too.
totally, right?
Mhm.
And this song comes on, and they're it's up there singing that they would dance before you, Jesus. I remember that line and thinking, "Wow, okay, so this isn't like Footloose, these people dance, I guess." And see, I was as naive as I could get. But
Mm.
then I sat down and listened to this church service, and I really wasn't there for any reason other than to just survive maybe another hour or 2.
Mhm.
And what I heard over and over again was this reoccurring theme that God's not mad at you, he loves you. I
Mm.
literally it felt like I heard it 20 times. And I even went back years later and listened to the tapes of that night, and I don't he didn't say it as many times as I remember it, but it felt like that was the sermon. God's not mad at you,
Mhm.
he loves you. And it kinda got to the end, and at this church, they had an altar call, and I had seen these before, kinda knew what it was. Now, you gotta remember, I was a nightclub DJ, used to working in drag shows and large crowds, and so I knew how to move people. I knew how to get people to respond. If you got a
Mhm.
dead crowd, how to build it up. I knew how to get crowd participation, all that stuff. So I felt like walking into this at this altar call was one of those moments, and I was like, "I'm
Mm.
not not falling for this at all." And the pastor said, "If you're here tonight and you're hurting, if you just raise your hand, I just like to pray with you." And I was like, no, I know what this is. I'm smarter than this." And I would call it the Holy Spirit now, but back then I was just like kind of talking to myself and saying, "Scott, you've tried everything else. You've tried every type of life that you can imagine, and look where you've ended up.
Mm.
But you never tried this. You never really tried being a Christian, whatever that means." And this is all happening in maybe a fraction of a second, but it feels very slow and very methodical in my brain. And And there's 2 things that pop in my head. One is that maybe there's something to this. Maybe if I really tried this Christian thing, maybe that meant reading the Bible every day and whatever the ticks were that I had to mark off, I would do it for 30 days and see if there was something to it. Because maybe if there was, my life could change.
Mhm.
And maybe if there wasn't, then, it was all BS and I just lived for 30 more days. That's not a bad deal.
Mhm.
So I decided to reluctantly give it a try, but as soon as I'm, like, starting to like, raise my hand up to ask for prayer, it was kind of an epiphany for me in a moment that I was like, I've been, kind of piece I've left out of this so far is I felt like I was a liar. I was a person who didn't know myself very well, and I
Mhm.
constantly, made my stories, my life, everything reflect what I thought people wanted to hear. I don't know if you know
People
anybody.
pleaser.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, yeah.
Yeah, that was me most of my
Yeah.
life, so, yeah,
Okay.
I get
Yeah, totally.
it.
So in this split second of a sec of time, I thought to myself, the only way I can do this to make this choice is to do it with utter honesty. Now,
Mm,
I thought I was going to blow, like you said, blow up the church. I was going to be honest. Oh, this is all crap, and all that stuff. But that commitment that I was going to not lie about any of it was important to me. And raised my hand and said the prayer and had some sort of expectation that as I finished this prayer that something would magically happen,
mhm, mhm,
and it didn't.
mm,
And it was to say it was crushing is not really appropriate because I don't think I had that much stake in it yet, but I was mad. I
mm,
was mad because I had fallen for it. I had said the stupid prayer. I'd done it all, and nothing felt any different. So at the end of this church service, we got the opportunity to go back and meet the pastor, and I was not happy. So I was, like, waiting at the end of this line of people, and he's greeting them all. He's kind of he's probably, like, 5'6" or something, platinum blonde hair, real charismatic guy, shaking hands, hugging people, comes to me, sticks his hand out to shake my hand, and I wouldn't shake his hand, and I said, "I
mm,
said your damn prayer, and I
mm.
don't feel any different." And I swear in that moment, I thought first of all, I thought I'd probably get kicked out for being but I was so mad.
Yeah.
And, um, and it's like the whole world felt like it was waiting on his response. And
Mm,
what went into slow motion was just like, you see his face go from, like, mild concern because 'cause I'm like, I've got cuts all over my face, I've got a hat on, I look like a mean dude, and I just said this crazy thing to a guy that's about 6 inches shorter than me, and he was mildly concerned, and then it turned to sheer joy. He's like, "You did? You said the prayer? Oh, man. You've taken the first step in a lifelong journey, and the fact that you don't feel any different this moment doesn't mean that you're not any different. Just keep
mm,
giving it time, keep coming back, and see what God can do with your willingness."
mm.
So that 30 days has turned into 21 something years now. I've lived all over the world. I've been a missionary, a pastor. I've done all sorts of things to try to figure out where my role is now as in this world of believers, and I have learned a lot about myself along the way. I've also learned a lot about God and about people, and and every time that I try to, and you might relate to this in some ways. Every time that I try to step away from, not like I'm trying to leave my faith, but maybe I'm trying to do some secular work here. Come on, God, I don't need to
Mhm,
talk about you everywhere I go.
mm,
I can't
mhm.
help it. I talk about God constantly because
Yeah, yeah, I get
it's it's
that.
like it's like everything about me is here because of what God did.
Mhm.
And
I
so
agree.
yeah, so then to learn how to talk about that in a way that first of all doesn't put people off, but also
Mm.
shares the good news, it's important.
Yeah, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on starting this upcoming season, talking with people that I may or may not agree with certain things on. How should someone who has never done that before, or maybe they have and they just haven't done it well, what is the best way to start talking to somebody who you don't know anything about? You just come across them walking at the grocery store, or you see someone has a bad day and God's like, go talk to them. And you're like, what do I say? What kind of
Mm.
advice do you have in that moment coming from both angles. You were there, you grew up in the Christian faith, you decided it's not for you, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. You found acceptance in a place where most Christians who are very legalistic would be like, oh, how could you? Th- don't do that. No, homosexual. Oh, bad. But that's where you started, I think, where God started planting some seeds for you of what true unconditional love and acceptance actually means. And he uses anything. He used a donkey to speak to Nahum, I believe that was his name. So
Mhm.
he does these things. He can do what he wants. We all have our excuses of why we can't talk to people. Oh, I can't talk to that person, Lord. They might disagree with me. They might be mad at me. I don't know them. I don't whatever. How are you going to share with my audience today and tell them that they have no excuses? What would be the best way for them to approach a situation where God is just saying, "Talk to this person," and they're scared?
Well, the first thing I gotta say is that we're all different, right? So
Mhm,
what I'm gonna do and what someone else might do probably would be slightly different, but there's gonna be
mhm.
commonality, and we'll talk about the commonality in a second. I just wanna make that disclaimer there that
Yeah, no, that
because,
makes sense.
yeah,
Someone will come
not
up
everybody.
like you went up to the pastor and said, "I said your little thing and it did nothing for me."
Right,
It's the same thing. Someone else might have felt something completely different in that moment, but you didn't. That doesn't mean that nothing happened to you. That just means your experience was different from theirs. So, yeah, I completely
right.
get that.
No, yeah, totally. Something that I live in, like, literally probably say this to myself at least 2 or 3 times a day, is that I'll never meet someone in my entire life that Jesus didn't die for.
Mm,
Never. So, that gives me a context that when I meet a homeless person in the street, I could tell you as a human, I might feel uncomfortable.
mhm,
When it's time to give somebody a hug that's dirty, as a human, I might feel uncomfortable. I even get emotional talking about this. But I strongly believe that Jesus died for that person. Jesus
mhm,
literally gave his life up for that person to have a chance at having a relationship with him.
mhm.
And for Jesus to do that, I can hug somebody, right? Or I can just say hi. I can introduce myself. There's a lot of things that I can do that maybe are outside of my comfort zone, but they've totally when you look at it through those lenses, that Jesus died for these people. I need to be willing to do something else. To me, it's like carte blanche. Do whatever you want because it's not gonna be as big as dying for them. Please,
Yeah.
God, I hope you're hearing me.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that that's an important pretext to always just remember that. How to actually talk to people that don't believe like you. I think one of the greatest models for this is actually in the Bible. And if we look at Acts 17, Acts is one of my favorite books. I love it, love it, love it. And in Acts 17, Paul is in Athens, and he is, I believe he's on Mars Hill, and he goes up to all these great Greek philosophers and, people who are basically in charge of the faith of Greek mythology. And
Mhm,
he sees them, and they're in this space, and there's all these statues around of all the Greek gods. You remember the
mhm.
story?
Yeah, yeah.
And he what's the first thing he says to them? He's like, "Oh my god, you guys are very religious people. I can see that. And look at all that
Mhm,
you've done." So he first thing he's identifying is the similarity, right? We're all looking for the same thing. Now they've believe that they found it in these other named gods, and now Paul's job is to somehow level set, right? Is to say, "Yeah, we're the same." So in fact, look over here. You've got one statue over there for an unnamed god. Guess what? I know him.
mhm,
And he actually removes the need for all these other ones. And
mhm,
I can tell you about that now. And that is like verbatim, like the most perfect way I could ever communicate the gospel to someone who doesn't believe like me is I find similarities with them. I engage in conversation with them. I never belittle. I never judge. I never do anything. I talk about two things. One is, hey, you're doing it really good. I can see a lot of the things that you've got are already, I mean, you've got this figured out. And then I'm gonna share my experience, hopefully in a situation where I'm invited to share my experience, which is something we'll
mhm,
talk about here in a second. But then when I'm talking about God, I'm not talking about him or about Jesus in any terms that are judgmental or like, "Wow, you're such an idiot. I can't believe you haven't done this." 'Cause, I mean, who's gonna
Mhm.
listen to that anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what they do hear, though, is, "This is what has happened for me." And no one can argue, not a single person in the world can argue with what's happened for me, and to hear that, I mean, it's biblical. They'll know us by what? The fruit of
Our
our spirit
fruit.
and
Yep.
yep, yep, and the word of our testimony is the other one,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So so that testimony has power. Now, the things that I had to unlearn, like, when I first kinda made that decision to follow Jesus, I was at a charismatic, non-denominational church where we used churchy language, and and it's funny because I was, like, walking around in the early months dropping F-bombs like crazy, and these old church ladies are like, "Oh, that's Scott. God's working on him." And they're right. God was working on me, but it was also a great example of them. They could have been irritated and, all
Mhm.
sorts of things by this.
Had a bar soap with them at all times.
Totally. And I deserved it in every way, shape, or form, but that wasn't what they saw. They saw
Mhm.
the potential. They saw that God
Mm.
was working on me, and and through that unconditional love, again, that they gave me, I
Mhm.
was given the space now to become who I was gonna become in Jesus's care, and that has been,
Mhm.
man, what a ride.
I'm soaking this in. It is very good information. It's very helpful, and there is nothing out there like your personal testimony.
Hmm,
And like you mentioned, you can't refute that. Nobody can take that away from you. They can't say, "Nuh-uh, that doesn't make sense." It might not make sense. I mean,
that's why it's so
just to give
crazy.
a little snippet of mine, I was
Yeah.
set free from my pornography addiction at a porn convention. So, I
Wow.
mean, yeah, like, I can't take credit for that at all. You give the credit all to God because there's no way that's gonna happen in human form, you know?
Right.
You finding unconditional love in a homosexual club, that's not a thing that people think of. When they hear that, they're like, "Oh, but they're in sin." And it's like, "Okay, but they don't know it, and you going in there and just sharing that with them is definitely not helpful." So, how do we connect the dots? What I'm hearing from you is unconditional love,
Yeah.
and I love that because that is who God is, that is Jesus, that is what he did on the cross, was unconditional love. He knew who we were going to be. He knew who they were at the time. He knew who was going to betray him, and he did not give him shade at all during that time. He was
No.
very kind and treated him the same way he did the other disciples. He knows everything, and yet he still chose to do that. Even when Noah and the flood, he knew we were going to be a people that maybe at some point he'd be like, I might want to flood them again. He just knew that's how things were gonna go at some point.
There's gotta be days that God's got his, like, hand over the flood button.
He
He's like, "Eh,
he was like, "No, I told him no." Yes,
I'll give him one more
exactly.
time."
He knew what we were thinking. He knew what was gonna happen, and he still made that promise that, "I am not going to do this again." He is a God full of unconditional love, believing that you can change. That is a powerful thing that everyone needs to know. And we have the secret sauce as Christians. How can we not share that? How much do you have to hate somebody to not
Mm,
want to share the gospel with them when you know what happens if you don't accept Jesus into your heart? That should be sobering for all of us. How much do we have to hate somebody to not want to just go up and give them a hug? To not want to talk to them if God's nudging you to do so. I mean, where would you have been if people weren't showering you with love? If those church ladies did actually carry soap around and scrubbed it in your
mhm.
mouth and shamed you for the language you were using, where would you have been?
I'd probably be dead.
Yeah, we have to think about how we react with people, how we interact with people. And I know that this is something that I have not been perfect with at all. I was very judgmental. I still have my moments. I'm definitely a lot different than I was before, but I used to be very judgmental of people. Even while I was stuck in my pornography addiction, I was judging the people in the videos as I'm watching them. I'm like, you see how hypocritical you are, right? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And I hate myself for it. But still, it's, there's a lot of hurt out there, and
See,
unconditional
I
love can change it. Go ahead.
absolutely agree with you. I feel like you're hitting on such a key point of sin, right?
Mhm.
It's the act of sin is one thing, but the the biggest pain point that I'm aware of is how we see ourselves when we're in the midst of sin, and it's
Mm.
the quiet hate, right? Like
Mhm.
you just said, I hated myself
Mhm.
for what I was doing, right?
Mhm.
I've been in that
Yep.
position so many times that I've hated myself for something that I'm doing, and that hate is not of God, right?
Mhm.
Jesus doesn't hate you for looking at porn.
Mhm.
Jesus doesn't hate you for even wanting to look at porn. Jesus doesn't hate you for any of that. In fact, Jesus doesn't hate you at all. He loves you and sees the potential not just to change, but to step closer to him. And I'm gonna make that distinction really important 'cause we got change is one thing, and proximity to Jesus is another thing. If we simply try to bring people closer to Jesus, he'll handle everything else, the change, the whatever. He's got that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Our job is to just represent God well,
I
to
love
bring the
that.
light of Christ into every situation.
That should be very freeing for everyone who's listening right now. We don't have to do the heavy work. It's not
No.
our job to make them choose Christ. It's our job to be obedient to what he asked us to do in that moment and then allow him to do what he's going to do. And if that person never accepts Christ, it's hopefully not a reflection of how you did things during that time, but you should not take that personally. We should never take it personally if someone doesn't choose Christ because it's not about us. They're not rejecting us, they're rejecting Christ. We should feel sad and heartbroken for them because we know what that means, but we should not be offended and lash out or say, "Oh, I'm never doing that again. They rejected me." They didn't reject you, and I know I've been there before and I've done that, and that's why I'm saying it, but we
You know what?
cannot be
Yeah.
that way. So how do you I'm sure you don't always get people wanting to be saved every time you talk to them. So how did you
Almost
learn
never.
to accept Yeah. How do you learn to accept the, I guess, rejection?
What? I don't see it as rejection.
Mhm.
It one of the especially in Paris. So I was a missionary in Paris. Paris is one of the most secular, humanistic, like, I mean, it's a town of debauchery in so many
Hmm.
ways. Beautiful town, but it's also it feels about as far from God. I mean, like, literally, I felt like there was a cloud when I lived there. S People are very far from God in that space,
Mhm.
and so to, like, have a conversation if you get to tell someone you're a Christian, that's a thumbs up. "Wow, I did my job today. I said I was a Christian." Oh,
Mm.
that's a whole lot different than trying to lead someone in the prayer, but just to say, "Yes, I'm a Christian, and I'm doing things because I'm doing my life the way I'm doing it because I love God and I believe that He's called me to do this stuff."
Mhm.
That is such a testimony if you're not being a jerk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you're not
you
ripping
kinda
people
gotta
off.
live the right way.
Yeah, but just to take some pressure off that too, the right way means attempting to do better, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
mean it's like it doesn't
Yeah,
mean
you won't be
perfection.
perfect, yeah.
Nah. In fact, I found that it's a lot easier to talk about the ways that I missed the mark. The more I can talk about it, the less ammo it has in my life. There are people that think it's really hard to be as open as I've been. I've written a book about my overdose. I've written about all these horrible things that have happened to me. But it's by writing about them and just giving it light, it's like, oh, it just takes all the power away. And
Mhm.
now it's just about this story of this guy who got saved by God. That's the
Yeah.
story I wanna tell, you know?
Yeah, no, I get that. I think when we hide things, Satan uses that,
Mm.
and we can't let him win that way, so you have to be willing to open up, you have to share. The truth will set you free. You just have to share the truth in love if you're going to do that with someone who doesn't agree with you.
Yeah. So, can we go back to your original question? What do you do when
Yeah,
God tells you to talk
absolutely.
to somebody? I was just kinda praying about it quietly as we were talking, and I feel like one of the things that I've neglected to mention is we forgot to ask God what we're supposed to say. Um And not everybody feels that sort of connection, but a lot of times it's you can say, "Okay, God, I feel like you want me to talk to this person. What do you want me to say? Because I don't feel like I can just go in and share the gospel right now. I don't feel like I can get them to make a decision to follow Jesus. They certainly don't look
Mhm.
like they are following Jesus. What do I do?" And what I've found in almost every situation, it starts with the most disarming thing you can do. You either introduce yourself or you stand next to somebody, you don't look them in the eye, and you comment on something they're doing. It's
Mhm.
a way to break the ice, to not be confrontational, to not and then to find out in whatever way you can how you can help them.
Mhm.
And and sometimes, in fact, most times, that means that it's not about witnessing through our words, it's about witnessing through our actions. It's
Mm.
about showing God's love through maybe somebody needs a sandwich, or maybe they need a handshake. That's the thing I find with most homeless people, nobody touches them,
Mm.
and to be able to touch somebody's hand, I feel like that is one of the most divine things that we can do is to give them the gift of human touch in that moment, and it often feels awkward to me, but it's almost always something I walk away with feeling like, "Wow, okay, I stepped out of my comfort zone, I did something for someone else, and I loved them, I believe, even a fraction of the way that Jesus did." And
Mm.
that's a good thing,
Yeah.
or maybe it could be any number of things. I mean, the smallest little thing when you can help somebody without an agenda other than just to help them, that is like, man, it's like magic how it absolutely destroys the walls around us, right?
Mhm.
And then it's through that moment, maybe you're planting a seed that someone else gets to water, that then someone else gets to harvest, and that's why I said I don't look at any of it as rejection, is I just assume that I am a part of the process. I'm either the
Mhm.
first rung on the ladder or the last rung or somewhere in the middle. Doesn't know. I don't know, but as long as I'm doing my part, being honest about what God's doing in me, then God will handle the rest. And maybe somebody will come up after me to close the deal, or who knows?
Yeah.
Or maybe there's something happening inside this person's head that I don't even understand or can't even conceptualize.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm the first Christian they've talked to in 30 years.
Hmm.
Maybe it's the first time that they've actually been open to the idea of, wow, maybe God isn't all bad.
Hmm.
So to me, those are huge wins. But I also see myself as being called to a specific type of people. And Anna, you're going to be different than me, and every one of your listeners is going to be different than me, and that God
Mhm.
is probably lining them up to talk to different types of people. For me specifically, I look at the people on the furthest outside edge of faith that are getting ready maybe to leave it.
Mhm.
The people who've given up, who maybe are sick of organized religion or hypocrisy, or I mean, because my God, it's everywhere, right? To have a conversation with somebody like that, and again, I'm not trying to get a conversion. If they could just turn around for a second and look back at me and maybe hopefully see Jesus, that would be a win.
Yeah.
If they could just entertain the thought that maybe it's not all bad, maybe there are some pieces here that I could be a part of and I'd be okay with. Again, another big win.
Mhm.
So I guess all of that to say, we have to change our threshold for what success looks like. Because
Mhm.
success is, I would say, 99.9% of the time not going to be someone making an instant decision in front of you to turn to Jesus.
Mhm.
And and that's okay because you did your part, we're doing our part. And honestly, even if they haven't made that decision, maybe you made a new friend. And maybe it's
Mm.
through that friendship where you actually get to speak into someone's life at a deeper level, but it's really through relationship that we get to have the deepest conversations that matter the most,
I wonder if that's where we as Christians trying to witness have gone wrong, is we just think we have to do it all in that one moment because who knows
right?
what's gonna happen. And this is definitely freeing for those who think that way. I know I thought that way at first. Whenever I heard share the gospel, that's exactly what I heard was you have to share the gospel. Sit down with them, bring your Bible. You guys are going to have a mini Bible study and they're either going to accept him or they're not and who knows.
I even
That's
brought you your own highlighter. You can use this
yeah.
one.
Yeah,
It's
you
gonna be
could use
great.
this and here's a notebook and everything. Yeah. And that's not how it goes most of the time. Like you said, 99% of the time, that's not how it goes. It's in the moments where we get to be the hands and feet of Jesus. You mentioned having a no agenda, wanting to help somebody. That is significant because a lot of the interactions we have with people aren't that way. We're expecting something out of it. They're expecting something out of it. So if you go up to a homeless person they're either expecting you to tell them to move because they're making this area look weird, or they're expecting you they're probably not expecting you to come up and want to just hang out with them for a little bit and talk to them. Maybe there's a few people who will expect that or hope that. And that's where it's important that we remember we are the hands and feet of Jesus. You can't show on your face that you're a little apprehensive about talking to them. You can't
Right.
show that maybe you don't want to hug them because, ew, gross, they're a little dirty. Or if you're talking to someone who's homosexual or someone who you just heard them using a whole bunch of language and that's not your jam, you can't show the fear that's inside. I like what you said about asking God, "What do you want me to do with this? I feel you telling me to do this. So, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't know what to do." That addresses the anxiety and the fear that you have, but you're giving it to your Father who's going to help you take control of the situation because, again, it's not about us. It's not our power that's going to change anything in the situation with that person. We're just being obedient. We're just being his hands and feet. We're allowing God to do whatever he's going to do. So when you're feeling that anxiety and that concern about the situation he may want you to do, I think that was absolutely wonderful advice, Scott, to tell us we need to ask God, what do you want us to do? And I think that's also freeing as well because you're allowing God to do what he's going to do and you're just there for the ride.
Yeah, and you wanna clue into something you said, about controlling the situation. It's not our job to control the situation. It's
Mhm.
actually God's.
Mhm.
And when we try to take that control back from him, I think that's when, all of us feel overwhelmed. It's like,
Yeah.
"I'm not a god. I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing."
Yeah.
But the more that you see God take over those situations, and you gotta trust that God didn't just put you in this one moment at this one time, right? That he's made all of the things happen up until that for that person and for you to make all of this come together at the exact same moment. This situation is already under control. The only
Hmm.
part of it that's not maybe in control is me because
Mhm.
I'm not doing what God's asked me to do yet. So I'm going to go do that and then we're good, you
Yeah.
know?
That's a great perspective shift as well. I I think we I know I have done this. I don't know who else has. If you have, please leave me a comment and let me know. But I know there's been times where I have underestimated what God can do in a situation. And you just put it in a really good perspective that He's actually doing a lot more than we think He's doing in a moment. We just see from our perspective, we aren't focused on the fact that maybe He was preparing this person. Maybe this person just prayed, I want to kill myself today. Please bring someone to show me that you're real and show me love, and then I won't. And you didn't know that that happened. You just heard God saying, "Hey, I'm going to use you. Go talk to this person." You have a choice at that point. I mean, can you get blamed and say, well, this person decided to commit suicide, so it's your fault? I don't think so. Because again, you didn't know that was going to happen, but you weren't obedient. So he's either going to bring someone else to do it or the work is done. And that's just where the chips fall. But we have to be obedient in that moment. And we have to realize that whatever he's calling us to do, he already saw the outcome from beginning to end. He already knows the situation. I know I need to stop putting him in boxes. And when he tries to climb out, stop pushing him back in and putting the lid on it. Anyone else who's listening and you've done that or you're still doing that, we need to stop because we aren't allowing him to do the amazing work that he can do in and through us and for other people. And
Right.
that's the only reason we're here is to be there for other people, to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We're not here just to have fun for however many years we're here and then we're done. We have a mission to do and we aren't doing it right if we're trying to box up what God's trying to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I just kept thinking as you were talking, I've done I've done most of the drugs that you can imagine.
Mm.
Uh, and some of them are pretty powerful, make you feel pretty great, but none of them compare to being used by God to change someone's life. Not even close.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest issue now with sharing the gospel or whatever is FOMO. I'm afraid that I will miss the opportunity to be a part of what
Mm.
God's doing, and I don't wanna miss that, man. It's so cool.
That's
And
the only kind of FOMO that is acceptable to have. I
the
love
well,
it.
But it's absolutely true because it's like, "Okay,
Mhm.
God, I know
Mhm.
you're telling me to do this, and of course I want to out of obedience and all those things, but I wanna be there. I wanna see what you're gonna do in that person's life."
Mm.
I remember one time that I was many, many years ago, I wanted to go buy myself a fill in the blank. I didn't know what it was, just something new to make me feel better. I had a little money from my payday and everything was great. And as I went to the mall to go spend that, I think I had $100 extra I was gonna spend on something. I didn't know what it was yet. I was so excited. But I felt like God was telling me, "Don't spend that money. Just don't spend it right now." And then I went to church, and then I was at church, and I felt like God was telling me to give that money to, this person that I knew, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna do that. That's weird, first of all, and it's also my money." But in that instance, little encouragement, I finally did it. And I went over and I did it during a moment, I did it during, like, the music of worship, so she couldn't talk to me, I couldn't talk to her, I, like, got in this awkward moment, I said, "I just feel like God told me to give this to you, and I don't know what to do with it, but let's not make it weird," you know? And, I went and sat down, and then she came up to me later, this is a friend of mine's wife, by the way, and she came up to me later, and she was crying, and she said, "Scott, literally moments before you had given me that money, I had made a commitment that I was going to start tithing again."
Hmm.
And I went to put the tithe money into the bucket, and I was like, "I don't know how we're gonna pay our bills. I don't know how I'm gonna make this happen." And then the bucket passes by, the music starts, and here comes Scott Mocha with a $100 bill and hands it to me. Says, "Here, I don't know what this is for, but I'm supposed to give it to you." And she said that she had been crying from that moment forward
Hmm.
because it's like, "Oh, God will provide for me." I mean,
Hmm.
and I got to be a part of that. I got
Yeah.
my obedience got to be a part of that message in her life, and I bet she remembers it to this day, and I mean, this is 20 years ago. I
Hmm.
remember it. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, those stories stick with you, I think. Who wouldn't feel the fear of missing out on that after you've had one of those experiences? Like you mentioned, it is a high that is unlike anything else. It's natural, it's healthy, it's healing. Once you do it, you desire it more. You always have to make sure that your expect or not your expectations, your intentions are pure while you have that expectation, not like, "Ooh, how can I be used?" And like you go seeking out opportunities which maybe God's not offering to you and then something goes awry. Of course, he's still gonna work with that because he knew you were gonna do it. But we have to be careful. We can't just go willy-nilly and just do whatever we feel like because we love that and we wanna feel it again. You can't force it. That's what I'm getting at is, like, you can't force that feeling to come on. It is authentically God.
Yeah, you can't create it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But you can sure miss it.
Yeah,
Whew.
yeah, and when you do, you feel that guilt.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think you feel the negativity of it. That is something that we should, as Christians, never want to feel. That heartbroken, I missed listening to God. I missed a chance to obey Him. We're always upset with our children when they don't obey us. We say, "Well, it's not that I don't love you. I'm just upset right now that you did this when I asked you not to, or I
Right,
asked you to do this and you told me you did, but you didn't." We feel a sense of sadness because our children chose not to listen to us. How much more does God feel that towards us when we don't obey him? And if you feel that not not judgment, but if you feel that correction, you shouldn't live in the shame and guilt of it. You should repent and you should be more willing next time to just obey and realize that you don't want to feel that again. That is a heartbreaking feeling to know that you upset your heavenly Father and you shouldn't want to feel that again. And if you've gotten to that point where it doesn't bother you, then you might need to check your heart because there's something wrong there. We should not want to be okay knowing that we didn't obey God. I've been there justifying things. My son one time wanted to go across the street and give some food that we had to the homeless person or someone he thought was homeless across the street in a weird intersection where I was lucky I was able to get into the restaurant where we were going to. It was just an awkward position. And that's basically was my reasoning why we didn't do it. And still to this day, I beat myself up for an opportunity he could have had to be a blessing to somebody. And even if that person wasn't homeless, maybe they were still hungry. Maybe they would have been like, "Oh, thank you, but I just ate." He didn't know what was going on with the person. He just saw the person sitting across the street and he just wanted to go do something nice for them. And I shushed him for it and I felt terrible for it. I still do. It was like a year and a half ago. I still feel awful about it. So I try not to do that anymore. Case in point, last year, there was a woman who had a sign that said, "Anything helps." And we had a water bottle that hadn't been opened and he wanted to give it to her. And I could tell by the way she was dressed and some things that there's something off about this because there's always people standing there and then in a different area. And it's just like a thing. I knew it was a thing. And I'm like, God, I know it's a thing, but I'm not going to do what I did to him last time. So I told him, okay, go ahead and give it to her because she'd been standing out in the heat. So he did. And I watched and she smiled. She took it. He walked back. He was happy. He got back in his seat and I'm watching her and I'm like sitting not that far away. She said, "Thank you" from over there. But then she put it into her purse, which was a nice purse hidden behind a rock. And then she pulled out her iPhone and I'm sitting there. I'm going, I knew it, God. I knew it. But I still felt okay because I didn't squash my son's desire to do what he felt God wanted him to do. It's not for us to judge the character of people or what they do with whatever we give them. You're just supposed to be obedient to what God's telling you to do. And if you're a party like I was, he was telling him to be obedient in that situation. I had a choice to make. Was I going to stop him and say, "Oh, no, no, no. She looks like she's already good. Just leave it alone." Or was I going to step out of the way and forget whatever I thought of the situation and allow my son to have that moment with God? I think that's another angle that we need to remember as Christians is that, again, regardless of what we think of the situation we're in, we still also need to be obedient, even if he's not specifically telling us to do something. There is still something he's telling us to do. Step out of the way and let this person do what they got to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great word. I receive it too because I do that with my kids.
Yeah.
And
We don't want to see them get hurt. We want to make sure
mm-mm,
they make good choices. And sometimes we mess up. We're human.
I am 100% human, and, I seem to create reminders of that all the time. But the thing that I was reminded of when you were talking about that though, my family, we have our own issues with the church. I don't now, but my family still does, and they have made
Mhm,
comments about, it seems to always be about money or tithing or anything like
mhm,
that. It's like, how do you know that that pastor's not just using it to go buy hookers or whatever?
mm,
I mean, they have
mhm.
to go to the
Yeah,
extreme, right?
yeah.
But
There are sadly a few that are, and they're getting found out by God, but yeah,
yeah,
no, I get
yeah,
it.
but my answer is always the same, is that it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter if they use it for their own earthly needs or for what, because I did my part. I did what God is asking me to do, and that's to
Mm,
give my money to the church. It may not be that church, it could be a different church, whatever. But it's not about me giving them money. It's about me not making the money my God.
mm,
And
mhm,
and when that and tithing allows me to relinquish that hold that money has on my life a little bit to say,
mhm,
"Okay, God, I'm gonna give this part away first, and it's gonna scare me, but I'm gonna do it." And that's the whole process, right? What the church does with that money, or the pastor, or the person, or the homeless person, or the person acting like they're homeless, what they do with that opportunity is really between them and God, because now, I mean,
mhm,
you're not just giving them the money or that moment, you're also kinda giving it to God, right? I
mhm,
mean, Jesus says that, "What you did for the least of these, you did for me."
mm.
So, if you think of it in those terms, it's like, "Oh, here's that water," and she takes the water and sticks it in her purse. And it's like, "Oh, see, you didn't need that. You got that Louis Vuitton purse," you know? But maybe that maybe that little bit of kindness from the eyes of a beautiful young child, maybe that broke through and made a chip into an otherwise impenetrable armor on this person's body. You never know.
Mhm.
And so I just try to write it up like that and say, "Hey, whatever they do with it's their business. They gotta answer to God, not me. I did my part."
Yeah. See, you just broke down another one of those excuses people have of why they don't give to either the church or to homeless people, to people who look like they're doing drugs or drinking. It's like, if God tells you to do it, you just need to do it. You don't
Just do
need
it.
to worry about what happens afterwards. That's not on you.
I like to believe, though, that God, first of all, knows me, knows that I
Mhm.
sometimes make mistakes, and if I think that God is telling me to give somebody a hamburger, and God's not telling me to give that somebody that hamburger, I don't think God's gonna punish me or them for me trying to follow God's will.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but if I don't do it, and God's like, "Give him that stupid hamburger, Scott,"
Yeah.
then then that puts me in a much different position, right? I would much rather err on the side of, "Oh, sorry, God, I thought that was you telling me. I'm trying to follow you."
Yeah.
And God could go, "No, I appreciate you trying, but this is what my voice sounds like, not like that."
Mhm.
You'll be like, "Oh, sorry, dad."
So that's also very helpful for us to know because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of times where we feel this has to be God and we do it because it doesn't seem like it's something terrible. So why wouldn't he ask us to do that? And we do it and maybe it backfires a little or it didn't go the way we thought it was going to go. He can still use that, and he still does use that. Maybe
100%.
he's just testing your obedience, or like you said, "Well, this is really my voice. That wasn't my voice. This is my voice." It gives you a chance to discern what is truly his voice as opposed to not his voice, which is something we really need to know as children of God. It says his sheep will know his voice. So
Yep.
if you're being obedient to the voice you're hearing and it's calling you to do good things, that's not bad, but if it doesn't go the way that you thought it was, or you find out later maybe that wasn't God, then you have better discernment next time of,
Right.
okay, this is what I felt last time I thought it was God. What is different from this situation to that situation? And then you can see, does it line up the same way? Maybe it isn't God. Should I really be doing this? Or this is different than it was last time, so perhaps this actually is God. And it's a trial and error type of thing. As long as you're not doing anything that is sinful in the meantime, as long as you're not being asked to do anything sinful, then I don't think there's anything wrong with just doing something good for somebody. Maybe that's just you feeling like you're supposed to do something good, but you're saying, oh, maybe it's God. Just do the something good and see how that works. Maybe he's testing you. Like you mentioned earlier, we go through tests and he's teaching us things and he's shaping us into who we're supposed to be through the situations you were doing. You were F-bombing in the beginning, but the people were speaking life into you and they were helping God shape you into who you were supposed to be. Maybe that's what he's doing with you is he's testing, are you going to be obedient? When
Mm.
you hear that I'm supposed to be doing this, or why don't you do this? Are you going to be obedient? Maybe he's allowing the thing not to go the way you thought it would be because he's testing you. Like with Job, he allowed Satan to do certain things to him, but said, don't do this. So he was able to do certain things. He wanted to test Job, see how Job would react. He already knew, but he wanted to show Satan, I think, "Hello, this is my servant Job. When I said he was perfect, this is what I meant," kind of a thing, you know? Just
Mhm.
thinking the hamster's turning.
Yeah, I think he also wanted to show Job too, right?
Mhm,
I can think of situations in my own journey where I was driving to lunch with someone 90 days after giving my life to Christ, driving to lunch to go tell the first person about my story. This is gonna be the first time I'm sharing my story with somebody,
mhm.
and I'm driving to that lunch, and I fold down the visor in my car to block the sun, and a baggie of cocaine literally fell
Oh,
out of my while I
no.
was into my lap, and I'm, like, driving down the road, and I, like, throw the baggie out the window, and I'm like, "Oh my god, Satan is in my car," and I went to lunch
Oh.
with the guy, I mean, I hardly knew this guy. I'm like, "You'd never believe it, a baggie of cocaine just fell in my lap," and he's like, What?" And it took me some time to kind of look back on that moment and say, because for a while I was like, That's the devil. That's just pure and
Mm,
simple, the devil." And
mhm,
then I look back on it, and I'm like, "Well, really? What if God was allowing that moment so that I could, before I walked into this lunch with this person I never met before, I could have this different vision in my head that I'm really not that guy anymore. I
Mm.
had cocaine literally fall in my lap, and I threw it out the window. That would not have
Mhm.
been me 91 days prior.
Yeah.
So, maybe I really was different. I mean, what a great epiphany out of this what seemed to be a dark moment, and now I look back on that as a fond memory
Yeah.
because it was a defining time for me that I could say that that drug is not over me anymore.
Mm.
I'm God's now. It's great.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's equally funny, but also a very powerful story. I love it. Well, Scott, you have broken down barriers. You have created some inspiration in my audience. You have given me great perspective and also reminded me of areas I need to still work on. Through conviction, I will hopefully get to where God is calling me.
We
How
can all hope for that, right? We can all hope
Yeah,
for it.
yeah, I know. How has God used you now?
I wrote a book, called A Row with Two Chairs, and I encourage anybody who's on any journey like this to check it out. It's really it's a memoir. It's the deep, dark stories of this whole journey of, having an overdose is chapter 1, and it follows me for 10 years, learning what it means to walk with God. And I'm not trying to promote the book. I'm moreover saying that it what I learned in that journey was that I think I spent a good 5 or 6, maybe 7 years trying to chase what I now call vocational ministry, where I make my living off of ministry.
Mhm,
And I moved to Los Angeles to work at a really large mega church here, and I ended up losing my job. I
mm,
mean, like, all sorts of stuff went sideways, and I was like, "How could this be? God, you're calling me to ministry, but nobody wants to." And the distinction for me came in understanding that my life is ministry.
mm,
My I don't need a paycheck. In fact, it kinda soils it to make it your job. In fact,
mhm,
if you can make your living somewhere else and then do the ministry because you love it, then it's a lot more fun. And
mhm,
then the other thing is that my biggest ministry is with my kids. I have 2 boys, 8 and 10 years old, and then my beautiful wife. And our family is where my ministry is first. But for me now, the way that my non-vocational ministry works out is that I cannot stop talking about God. Every time I'm given an opportunity to talk about just anything, it ends up being about God, and I can't help it. It's not just that I'm that sold out, it's that I've really experienced what God has. I mean, I doubt I've experienced even half of it, but
mm,
what I've experienced has been so freaking good. It's so much better than the life that I was living before. We were talking a minute ago about obedience, and obedience used to kinda make me go, "Oh God, I don't wanna be
yeah,
obedient. I'm wild and crazy." And what I learned was that the things that God's calling us to are not He's not telling us to be obedient to, like, just, like, "Get in line, Scott, and do your stinking job." No,
mhm,
this is the path to a better life. You can live a much more fulfilled existence. You can be so much happier if you just listen and pay attention and follow the simple cues that God is giving us. They're not that hard.
mm,
And when you start getting success in that space, it's like, "Oh, wow, this is what life could be." I absolutely love my marriage. I love my kids. I love all those things, and I have been taught along the way, and I'm continuing to be taught along the way, the posture that God wants me to have in those spaces, and how to keep our sex life holy, how to
mhm,
keep our family conversations centered around God. How do we all these things are really important, and when we look at it from the outside, sometimes it's like, "Oh, that's obedience. Scott doesn't look at porn." No, I'm not gonna look at porn because I
mhm,
love my wife, and I want to invest every bit of carnal desire I have into her because she deserves it.
mhm,
But that's fair, right? I mean, that's what our marriage is for, and we're supposed to be building our relationship that way, it
yeah,
with again, God at the center. That's the point. So, I just wanted to bring that up that I feel like obedience, it almost has this bad
yeah,
connotation, but it's such it what it really is it's like, "Oh, here are the keys to ultimate happiness. Would you like to try any of these?" So, "No, no? Okay. You wanna
hmm,
still be sad? Okay. Well, here's you wanna try this little one?" I mean,
yeah,
it's just that
yeah.
simple.
It's so funny how some of us just enjoy staying in our prisons of doom and gloom when the door is, like, wide open.
I think we all do that.
I've been there, sometimes still there, depending on what it
Yeah.
is, but yeah.
Yeah, there's too much light out there. I don't wanna go out there. No,
Yeah.
I get
It's
into it.
nice in this cocoon of warm blankets and
Yeah,
darkness. Yeah. Scott, thank you for an absolutely amazing conversation, for breaking down walls and barriers, excuses, giving us encouragement and hope for our futures, especially for those who might be listening who haven't accepted God yet, and for giving us fresh perspective on how to live our life on ministry and to actually love it and be obedient, and just reminding us that obedience is not a dirty, awful word. It is a beautiful, healthy word that unlocks so many possibilities.
right. Yeah, and anybody that's interested at all in my book, I'm not telling everybody this, but I put the entire audiobook out on a podcast. So,
Awesome.
if you go to Spotify and you search for my name, Scott Mocha, or A Row with Two Chairs, you can listen to the entire book for free. I'm just trying to remove barriers so people can hear some of the stories because it's really great stories about what God has done, but from the context of this is the real truth, and sometimes it's ugly. In
Yeah.
the end, it's a beautiful story.
Thank you so much for being obedient to God and talking with me.
A complete honor, and, happy to come back anytime if you get further down this road and you wanna talk about it more. I'd love to talk about I obviously get excited about this stuff, so
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We'll chat again. This episode was a great opportunity for you to be empowered. Did you feel it? I know I did. I absolutely loved this conversation. Scott is an amazing person with such a heart for others, especially the outsiders. Did you feel that as well? If you are scared to share the gospel, then I hope that you are no longer feeling that way. I hope you feel freed in the ability to share the gospel now, because you realize it's a lot more simple than we've been making it. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a comment or a review for the podcast and let me know what you think. I can't imagine that you left this conversation in the same way that you entered it. I know that God had impacted you somehow through this, because I changed in the middle of recording it. So please share with me what you thought, and let's grow together spiritually.